I've been getting a lot of questions about the Horadric Cube lately, and honestly, I don't blame anyone for being confused. There are so many recipes, different tuning prisms, crafting options, and item upgrades that it can be hard to know what's actually worth using. So today I'm going to break down every part of the Horadric Cube, from adding affixes to upgrading gear, rune crafting, transfiguration, all of it. I'll also share some tips on when I personally use these recipes and when I think it's better to save your materials. If you're new here, I'm Raz and I stream Diablo 4 every day, and I've spent a lot of time experimenting with the Horadric Cube this season. So rather than just reading what each recipe says, I'm also going to explain when I actually use them and when I think they're worth your materials. What exactly is the Horadric Cube? The Horadric Cube is Diablo 4's advanced crafting station. It combines several crafting systems into one interface. Instead of replacing, let's say, like the occultist or the blacksmith, it adds new crafting options that aren't available anywhere else. You'll unlock the Horadric Cube when you complete the Lord of Hatred campaign, and once it's unlocked, it's available. And that is going to be located once you unlock this part of the map, Scovos, in Temis. So why is the Horadric Cube important? It becomes one of your main ways you'll improve gear throughout the season as you play. You'll collect different materials that can be used here to modify items, craft new ones, convert resources, and access recipes that you simply cannot get anywhere else. Unlike the occultist, this isn't just re-rolling gear. It lets you modify, upgrade, combine, and craft a huge variety of endgame items. So what can you do with it? Well, inside the cube, you'll find recipes for modifying equipment, crafting Horadric gems, creating runes, transforming tributes, crafting mythic uniques, and several other utility recipes. Tuning prisms, what are they? One of the core mechanics of the Horadric Cube is the tuning prism system. Instead of leaving your item upgrades completely up to chance, tuning prisms let you guide the outcome toward a specific category of stats or effects. So, they don't guarantee a specific affix, but they narrow the pool towards a category. So let me explain a little further. This is the aggressive tuning prism. It targets offensive stats like critical strike chance, attack speed, different types of damage multipliers such as physical, vulnerable, crit strike, poison, etc. Um, I will leave a link in the video below for a tuning prism guide that will kind of give you a general idea of what falls under each category. The next one is pragmatic tuning prism, which is going to be used to target mobility and utility. Um, that will include things such as movement speed, cooldown reduction, stuff like that. The next one is going to be defensive, and it's the protector's tuning prism. This targets things like armor, max life, damage reduction, so on and so forth. The other one is resourceful tuning prism, which obviously targets resource. That's going to be things such as max resource, resource regen, different resources for different classes like Fury, Spirit, Essence, etc., etc. And next, we have the Adept's Tuning Prism, and this is going to be used to target skills and core stats based on your class that you're playing. So, I'm playing Barb. This is going to target things like Strength, ranks to Whirlwind, stuff like that. So, it just depends on what your class. The next one is going to be Chromatic Tuning Prism, and this is going to be used to target single resistances. And this can actually target all resistances as well. Before, I don't believe it was like that, but I've tested it and it is all resistances, but also single ones such as fire resistance, poison resistance, cold, etc., etc. So the next those prisms are used mainly for gear modification, and building. The next types of prisms are going to be used for transfiguration, which we will dive into a little bit more later on in the video as well. So the next one is going to be the Colean tuning prisms. Now, these can only be put on amulets, but it allows you to put an additional aspect on your amulet while keeping it modifiable. All right, now that we understand tuning prisms, let's look at what you'll spend most of your time doing at the cube, crafting and modifying your gear. So first, we're going to start with adding an affix. This adds a new affix onto a piece of gear that has room for another affix. Now, adding an affix can only be on common, rare, and magic items. It cannot add or remove affixes on legendaries, uniques, and mythics. You can't do that. But this is why I love common, rare, and magic gear because they honestly can do so much more for you than legendaries can. Um, so what is required for adding an affix? You need at least one primordial dust just for one roll. And you also need 5 raw primordial dusts. And obviously, this is where tuning prisms are going to come into play. So here I have this item. Um, Luckily, this item I only need one new affix on it. So I will show you guys. I have weapon damage, strength, and physical damage multiplier. Now, this is like a perfect, almost a perfect weapon because you can see it almost matches my weapon that I have now. I only need to add a critical strike damage multiplier. So I'm going to put the item in the cube and I'm going to add the affix. And since I am going to add a multiplier, it's going to be an offensive tuning prism. So I'm going to go ahead and add, and I will show you guys what I get. I know some of it is a little bit cut off, um, but I will show you guys the before and after. So here's before, and it added a damage over time multiplier. Okay, so next we're going to talk about chaotic and focus rerolls, when to use one or the other, and when it's just best just to remove an affix altogether. So I'm going to go ahead and use this item to demonstrate. It has max life, max resource, fire resistance. Max resource is the one that I want to keep. The others I don't care about. The fire resistance I can use to focus reroll into resistance to all elements, but max life might be one that I could just remove. Now, without compromising this max resource, I'm going to go ahead and show y'all. You can come to the occultist here and lock in GAs. So for this item specifically, I want to keep the GA on max resource. The other two, like I said, they don't matter. I don't want them. For this build, this character specifically, I don't need them. So I'm going to go ahead and lock in this max resource GA. And what you do is you just press enchant, accept, no change, and replace affix. That's going to lock in that GA. So you see the item still has 3 GAs on it up top. Doesn't show next to the max resource, but it keeps that number on there. And this is going to make it so that you aren't losing max resource at all. And you could remove all affixes and it would not let you remove the max resource. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and start with focus reroll that resistance. Let's see if we can get all resistance to all elements instead of fire. So we're going to go ahead and put a chromatic tuning prism in, which is going to target the resistance, and it's going to only target the fire resistance. It's not going to target anything else. So let's go ahead. Poison resistance, shadow. And this might take a little bit longer if you're aiming for resistance to all elements because it's a little more rare than a single resistance. So it'll keep going over and over the ones that you don't need, but eventually it'll get there. Resistance to all elements. Perfect. This is an okay roll, but just for the video, I'm going to keep it at that. It's about mid. But again, you could continue to focus reroll if you want a higher number than what it gave you. So next we are going to do a chaotic reroll, and that's going to be to chaotic reroll off max life. So what a chaotic reroll does is it changes the category. Right now, max life would be considered a defensive category. So chaotic reroll is going to roll it into a different random category. So I'm going to go ahead and put a defensive prism in there because I want it to target that max life. So I'm going to go ahead and see what it gives me. It gave me strength. So strength is also a funny one. Strength is technically under the adept tuning prism, which is the skill and core stat, but it also falls under the offensive tuning prism as well. So yes, you could um, keep that on there, but for this sake, I'm just gonna go ahead and keep strength because that is something that I need. My next one that I need is Fury Regen. So again, we're gonna add the affix and we're gonna do resource because that is your resource. Fury is my resource for Barb, and we're gonna go ahead and add it. Resource cost reduction. So we're gonna focus reroll that. Until I get Fury Regen, and that is exactly what we got. So this is pretty much a really good chest. For starters, it has the GN max resource, so that's perfect. Um, so why use a tuning prism? I think by now that's a little obvious, but I will say if you can do random rerolls, you can just press chaotic and it'll chaotic reroll something random off, which is not necessarily something we want. So if you have the prisms, you might as well use them to target something specifically that you want it to focus reroll, chaotic reroll, add or remove off. All right, I'm going to show y'all how removing affixes work. So I'm going to use this item to demonstrate. I'm going to go ahead and do the lock in on that movement speed because I want to keep that on these boots. So there we go. Go back to the cube. I'm going to put it in, and this is where I'm going to remove these because sometimes, yes, chaotic rerolls exist, but sometimes it's just best to remove it and not take the chance on what category it's going to give you. So I'm just going to remove everything. This is where I don't need to use the tuning prisms because I've locked in the only stat that I want. It's not going to let me remove it. So I don't need a tuning prism to give me the category that it's going to remove. So we're just going to go ahead and remove. And you see, if I move my camera, it won't let me remove any more affixes. That is because I locked in that movement speed, so it's there and it's not going to change. So for the boots on this one, I'll show you guys again. We're just gonna add a few things to it. We are going to add strength. We'll just add strength, armor, and fury regen. How about that? For that, we are just gonna do strength. Again, you could get strength out of either of these. So a lot of things fall under multiple categories, so it can get a little confusing, but we'll just go ahead and add strength here. And that gave me ranks to charge. So you could go into focus reroll, make sure it's what you want on there. It wouldn't matter because it's not going to change movement speed, but just for that sake. And there's strength. Again, it's a low roll, so if you want a higher roll, you can keep going until you get the one that you want. So next we are going to add, I said Fury Regen, so that is going to be a resource because Fury is the resource. I'm gonna add that. And I got Fury Regen. Again, it's the lowest roll, so if you want to focus, you can continue to roll that, I'll just demonstrate for y'all. And it gave me a 4. So that's another way to get the highest number if you wish to do that. The last one I said was I'm going to add armor, which is going to be a defensive tuning prism here. And I'm going to go ahead and just add that. And that gave me fire resistance. So again, like I said, a lot of these will fall under multiple different categories. So we're just going to go ahead and focus reroll that and hope that it lands on something like armor or something that I can use. This gave me resistance to elements, so I'm gonna stick with that for now, but you can keep going and it'll eventually hit the one that you want. So next I'm going to show you guys how to upgrade items. So once you've added 4 affixes on to a rare piece of equipment, you can upgrade it to a legendary. Now, I find this best to do in the beginning when you don't have any aspects unlocked. Um, but endgame, I normally don't use upgrade to legendary. So I'll show you guys, it'll add a random aspect onto this piece of gear and it'll upgrade it to legendary. So I'm going to go ahead and just do it for this item, and it gave me, you can see, a random aspect. So here's what I actually prefer to do. Like I said, upgrading to legendary is a good way to get aspects early on, but once you've gotten all your aspects and you don't need to do that, you can simply just go over to the occultist, and any item that has all 4 of your affixes, you're like, I'm done, I've removed whatever, all the affixes that you need, you can just add it into the occultist under imprint aspect. Choose the aspect that you want. Right now, for this, I'm going to do Battle Mad, and it turns it into a legendary with the one that you want. So I do think it's a good way to get aspects early on, but again, like if you already have them, don't waste the materials upgrading it to legendary. Just take it to the occultist and get the one that you want instead of it being a random. Um, so there is another way to upgrade as well, and that's going to be to unique. So um that I'll show you guys on a rare piece of equipment because there's many ways you can do this. So to upgrade to a unique, you can see that it's grayed out, which means you can't do it. So you need a common item, which is going to be the grayed pieces of gear or just the ones without anything. You can make blues and yellows rare common pieces of gear just by removing every single aspect until it is a common piece of gear. You just do that by removing literally everything on it. Now you see you have the option to upgrade to unique, and this is going to give you a unique piece of gear within this categories. I typically do this when I'm having a hard time finding a specific unique. And I know I have these, pieces of gear that, can be used to upgrade uniques that I don't need. So that's when I would use it. All right, next we're going to talk about transfiguration. So what is it? Transfiguration lets you add another layer of customization by applying additional affixes, effects, stuff like that. So depending on which piece of gear you're modifying, there are 2 ways to transfigure. I'm going to first show you guys how to add an extra aspect onto an amulet. Now, you can only do this on amulets, but you're going to go ahead and put your amulet in the cube. You're going to add a Colian tuning prism. This makes it so that you can add the aspect while keeping it modifiable. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys on an amulet that I'm going to trash after the video, but for reference, you're going to want to do a few things before you transfigure. because once you remove this and you transfigure, it has a high chance of being unmodifiable. Um, so I like to use the acronym STEAM, which stands for Socket, Temper, Enchant, Aspect, and Masterwork. Um, Once you do those things, you're safe to transfigure. But if you do transfigure and your item becomes unmodifiable and you haven't done one of those things, then it's highly likely you can't go back and fix it. So what we're going to do here is add this prism, add your amulet, and we're going to transfigure. Now this is just going to add an aspect onto the bottom there. You're obviously going to want to keep rolling until you find the aspect that you want. So know before you go in, but for now we're just going to keep it at that. Now we're going to go ahead and transfigure this item again. I wouldn't I would temper, I would, masterwork and all that before I did anything, but this is for the sake of the video. So, you can add an entropic tuning prism, but if I personally don't use them because it removes certain things, like gem strength you can't get with an entropic tuning prism. It also makes it 100% unmodifiable, whereas if you don't use one, you do have a chance of getting this modifiable. But again, it's most likely going to be unmodifiable anyways, but I do prefer to not use them. That's just a personal choice. Um, you can do as you please, but we're going to go ahead and transfigure this item. And it gave me a transfiguration of resistance to all elements, which actually isn't bad. Again, it's unmodifiable, so I can't change this. I have to trash this, but for the sake of the video, that is what transfiguration is. All right, next we are going to talk about amalgamation. Now, what is amalgamation? Unlike the recipes we've looked at so far, it isn't about modifying a single item. Instead, it combines 5 identical items and turns it into a new or upgraded version. So I'll show you guys some examples of what you can do with that. First, is boss materials. So if you take any of these boss materials that you've acquired, you combine, it's going to take 5 away from this stack. It's going to give you a unique that drops from that specific boss. So shard, overkill, and so on. I'll show you with a different boss. Mantle, and Unbroken Chain. So any of these you don't feel like farming or you just have a abundance of boss materials, that's a good way to get your uniques from specific bosses. Another thing you can do is tributes. So I really love this one. You can put 5 tributes in. It's going to take 5 off of the stack and it's going to turn them into the rare version. So once you've gotten 5 of these total, then you can put them in a stack of 5 and turn them into legendaries. And there you go. This one specifically I love because you can turn the tribute of armaments into the mythic tribute. So as long as you have 5 of these, and they will start as the blue, and then you'll need to upgrade them to rare and then legendary. And then once you have 5 legendaries, you can upgrade them to 1 mythic um, armament. Um, so I love that about the tributes. It's really easy to, a good way to get the mythic tributes that you maybe haven't seen. Another thing is nightmare sigils. So you can combine 5 random nightmare sigils and turn them into a escalation sigil. So if you're having a hard time finding those, that is a good way to get those. Lastly is gems. This is something that you're going to absolutely 100% need to use. So you may think, I can just craft gems at the jeweler. Well, that is true, but the only ones you can craft are up to grand. And now, since the Lord of Hatred expansion, they've added Horadric gems. You can get regular Horadrics and Horadric Flawless. So, what you're going to want to do is craft your gems. I'm going to craft 5 because that is how many I need. I'm going to go over to the cube and we're going to take those 5 grand gems and it's going to automatically just put them into amalgamation, but now you have 1 Horadric diamond. For the sake of this video, I will show y'all how to get the flawless. So I have a bunch of skulls I've been saving up. I'm going to turn them into a bunch of Horadric skulls. And I'm going to go until I get 5 Horadric skulls because you're going to need 5 to put back in to get a flawless Horadric gem. So that is how you get the Horadric gems. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit difficult. Gems can be hard to farm for, but there are many, many ways that you can farm for the gems. So, another way that you can use the amalgamation is by runes. That is actually something I almost skipped, but if you put 5, let's say 5 magic runes in here, go ahead and do the amalgamation. It's going to spit out a um, rare rune here. And if you put 5 rare runes, it's going to upgrade it to a random legendary rune. So that is a good way to get legendary runes. If you're having a hard time finding them, it does spit out random ones, but that is a good way to get them. All right, next we are going to talk about 3-to-1 transmutation. So Cube lets you combine 3 duplicate items into 1 new random item in the same category, or if we're talking about gear, it's going to give you the same item, just probably different affixes. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the mythics. I'm going to put 3 rages in, and it's going to give me a new one. If I usually use this when I don't like the stats, they're really bad, and it's not going to be good for my build. Sometimes I'll keep the ones that I don't want just so that I can re-roll them. So I'll put 3 random uniques in, re-roll these, and it's going to give me a brand new one. This also works with charms and seals. So you can put 3 charms in of the same one, and I'm going to do Banished Lord's Talisman, and it's going to give me a new Banished Lord's Talisman charm, just different stats. So there's that. And then I'm also going to re-roll some of my seals, and I usually do this if I'm having a hard time finding in the beginning a 6 slot seal. So you can see that mine that I have equipped says 6 charm slots. This one only says 5. So you can take 3 5 charm slots and try to get a 6 slot out of it. It is kind of hard, but it is possible. But for this sake, we'll just go ahead and transmute that. It gave me a 5 one, but you can continue. If you have a bunch of 5 slots, you can continue doing that. And eventually you might get a 6 slot. Another one you can do is re-rolling random charms into another random charm. I don't usually use this, but some people do, so and it gives me a random charm out of that. So that is something that you can do with the 3-to-1 transmutations. All right, there are a few other random things that you can do with the cube that I love to utilize. So we're going to start with a unique power reroll. Now, this is when the aspect power on your unique is not at what you want. So I'm going to go ahead and use this one, although it's at a 19% out of 20. I'm going to go ahead and use it and try to get it to a 20. So we're going to unique power reroll, and this is going to take the attuned primordial dust. Now, this is pretty hard to get. I mean, I only have 42 and I don't have to use it very often. But you can get it. It says from cube spoils and more plans, cash rewards from the Tree of Whispers, Elite Monsters, and the Undercity. So those are some ways that you can get it. But we're gonna go ahead and try and re-roll this and see if we can't get a 20% out of it. Now it'll probably drop it down, or it kept it at 19, 16, 18. It's gonna give me everything but 20. 19 again. It's a little bit of a gamble, but it's definitely worth doing as long as you know you're going to keep this item for a while and you're not wasting all of your material. So I finally got a 20. Another thing you can do is re-roll your charm powers as well. It's going to take the same primordial dust. It's just going to also require the Horadric resin, which this is obtained by salvaging charms and seals. So I obviously have a lot. So I definitely need to use that, but we're just going to keep rolling until we get a 20 on this. And like I said, it's going to... If you start to get low on materials, I would just recommend going with the highest one that you get. Like, I'm going to go with the 19. I'm going to go ahead and stop there because I want to farm for more of that attuned dust. The next thing I want to cover is re-rolling charms. Now, this is why I don't use the 3-to-1 because I prefer to just take one charm and roll it until I get one that I am happy with. So I'll save a few random charms that are within my set. So I'll save a few crucibles here. For this video, I'm going to use one of these, but it's going to just take this charm and it's going to roll it into the same charm set, but it's going to be a different stats, or it might be a different charm itself, whether that's Linta or Baru or Phoba. But it'll stay within that set of charms. So I'm gonna go ahead and re-roll this, and it gave me a Phoba, and I'm just gonna keep rolling. This is a good way to get GAs on your charms. It might take a very long time, but it's worth it, especially when you rack up as much as I have. But you can go until you feel like you've gotten the one that you want, or you can wait until you get a GA. I used to just do this and not even look at them until I got GA. But you see, it stays within that set charm category. So that is another way to use the cube. Another thing I would like to show y'all is crafting unique charms. So this is big, especially when you're getting the uniques that you want, but they're gear and they're not unique charms. So what you can do is take 3 random unique charms that you don't need or want, and then you take a piece of gear that you want as a charm. So let's say you want a Tybalt's Will charm, but you don't have any charms you only have it as the unique gear. So I'm going to take 3 random unique charms. I'm going to add whatever piece of gear I want as a charm and then add it all into the cube, transmute, and it's going to give me a Tybalt's Will charm. So now you have that as a charm. So I do love that if you're having trouble finding the unique charm that you want. So that wraps up my video on the Horadric Cube guide. I hope this answered some of the questions that you've had about the cube. If I missed anything or you've discovered a tip or trick of your own, leave it in the comments below. I always love seeing what the community finds that maybe I missed or didn't find. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more Diablo 4 guides. And if you'd like to hang out live, I stream Diablo 4 regularly on Twitch, so look me up, Bittersweet Raz. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.